Before the world even knew the names of great empires, Benin stood proud, a kingdom built by warriors, artists, and visionaries whose light refuses to fade. A kingdom where history was carved in bronze and greatness echoed through the centuries. Long before European ships ever touched African soil, before empires like Mali and Songhai captured the world's imagination, deep in the rainforests of West Africa, rose a kingdom of unmatched brilliance, mystery, and power, the Kingdom of Benin. The story of Benin doesn't begin with kings, it begins with the Agisos, a dynasty of divine rulers whose origin, like many African stories, is wrapped in legend and mystery. Agiso means king of the sky. They ruled from about 40 BCE to the 12th century CE, according to oral traditions. The first Agiso was Agodo, and he established the capital in Ubinu, which would later become known as Benin City. Over time, 31 Agisos ruled Benin, governing with the help of nobles, spiritual leaders, and village heads. During this era, the kingdom was already highly organized, with a structured government and spiritual practices. But no dynasty lives forever. As centuries passed, the authority of the Agisos weakened, and internal conflicts began to shake the core of the kingdom. The last Agiso, Owodo, was seen as unjust and unpopular. A major turning point came when he exiled his only son, Ekaladerhan, due to a false prophecy. This act of injustice led to the end of the Agiso era, and the people of Benin found themselves leaderless, yearning for a new kind of ruler. And so, the elders of Benin turned to the land of Ife, seeking royal blood to restore order. What they got instead was the beginning of a dynasty that would echo through eternity. Oramian, a powerful prince from Ile-Ife and son of the legendary Oduduwa, was sent to rule Benin. His arrival was historic, but short-lived. Oramian found it difficult to rule, due to language barriers and the fiery spirit of the Edo people. He referred to Benin as a land of vexation, and returned to Ife, but not before leaving behind a son, born of a Benin woman. That son would become a bridge between worlds. His name was Yuka, and he would become the first true king, the first Oba, of the Benin kingdom. Oba Yuka I founded the Obaship system in the 12th century. He was the first Oba of Benin, ending the era of the Agisos and starting a powerful monarchical tradition that still exists today. Under his leadership, Benin began to take shape as a unified kingdom, spiritually, politically, and militarily. The rise of Yuka I was more than a political shift, it was a cultural rebirth. A new era had begun, one that would give birth to bronze masterpieces, towering walls, sacred rituals, and kings whose power rivaled the pharaohs. With a firm royal system, Benin's society began to flourish. The people became known for their advanced city planning, strong leadership, spiritual depth, and incredible craftsmanship. The groundwork had been laid for the golden age of the Benin Empire. From the Sky Kings to the crowned Obas, the story of Benin begins with myth, but blossoms into a legacy of power, beauty, and resilience. In the heart of the Benin kingdom stood more than a palace, there stood a god-king, the Oba. His voice was law, his presence sacred, and his power, absolute. But he never ruled alone. The Oba was not just a king, he was semi-divine, seen as the earthly representative of the gods and the spiritual heart of the kingdom. His presence was revered, and subjects often bowed, prostrated, or averted their gaze in his presence. The Oba had total authority, but his decisions were often guided by ancient customs, oracles, and royal councils. The Oba's palace was not just a home. It was a political headquarters, a spiritual center, and a symbol of royal authority, a city within the city. Located in Benin City, the palace was massive, with hundreds of courtyards and chambers. It was built with red earth, wood, bronze pillars, and richly adorned with bronze plaques narrating the kingdom's history. No one entered without permission. It was the seat of power, mystery, and divine energy. Even a god-king needs counsel. Surrounding the Oba was a council of powerful chiefs, the Uzama, guardians of tradition and wisdom. The Uzama Nyanran were a council of noble chiefs, tasked with advising and checking the power of the Oba. They played key roles in selecting and crowning a new Oba, and were often hereditary titles passed down through noble families. Key titles included the Ayes, which is the Prime Minister, Ero, Aliha, and Idohen. Other chiefs like the Energy, that is the provincial rulers, and Okeo helped administer territories. The Obaship was hereditary, usually passed from father to son, but not without rituals, tests, and sometimes, violent succession disputes. The new Oba was often initiated in sacred rituals, including communing with ancestors and offering sacrifices to the gods. The Oba was also the chief priest, presiding over major religious ceremonies like the Igu festival. Though powerful, the Oba's rule was not unchecked. A complex system of chiefs, guilds, and spiritual laws kept the kingdom in balance. The Iwibo Guild handled royal regalia and court customs. The Abiwe Guild helped manage royal family affairs and marriages. Guilds like Igan, bronze casters, and Ajiso, woodcarvers, reported to the palace but were semi-autonomous in their duties. Commoners could petition the Oba through village heads and intermediary chiefs. The Oba wore coral bead regalia, a sacred symbol of authority and divine favor. Items like the Ada, ceremonial sword, and Eben, fan of authority, were used during rituals and parades. His image was immortalized in bronze, lining the walls of the palace. This balance of power and divine kingship allowed Benin to enjoy centuries of stability, prosperity, and expansion. The legacy of the Obas still echoes today. The political system created a strong and centralized government, admired by both neighboring kingdoms and later, European visitors. Even today, the Oba of Benin remains a respected traditional ruler in Nigeria, with cultural and symbolic influence. The Oba was more than a king, he was the heart of a sacred kingdom. The warriors of Benin were not just fighters, they were protectors of an empire, builders of a legacy, and symbols of raw, calculated power. Benin had a highly structured military system, led by war chiefs appointed by the Oba. The army was divided into infantry, cavalry, when available, and elite warriors, with ranks and responsibilities. The Izomo was a senior military commander, a title passed to noble war leaders. Warriors trained from youth, learning weapon handling, battlefield strategies, and spiritual rituals for protection. The Benin military used strategy, espionage, and psychological warfare to dominate enemies. Tactics included ambushes, flanking maneuvers, siege warfare, and night raids. Soldiers used shields, spears, swords, poisoned arrows, and later, European guns acquired through trade. The Benin army was known for its discipline and unity, often intimidating smaller kingdoms into surrender without battle. From the 15th century onward, Benin's influence stretched far beyond its rainforest roots. Obas like Oba Uwer the Great, Oba Ozoluwa, and Oba Esigi led massive military campaigns. Conquered territories became vassal states, paying tribute and supplying warriors to Benin. Benin expanded westward, eastward, and southward, controlling trading routes, resources, and coastal towns. Oba Esigi, early 1500s, defended the empire against external threats and introduced Portuguese firearms into Benin warfare. Every war began with the gods. Before a battle, warriors would consult oracles, perform rituals, and wear protective charms. Warriors believed in divine protection, often carrying charms, amulets, and ancestral symbols. Defeats were seen as spiritual warnings, while victories were signs of divine favor. The Oba, as spiritual head, would bless weapons and send messages to the gods before battle. Benin didn't just conquer, it protected itself with one of the greatest engineering feats in African history. The Benin moat and wall system, known as Aya, stretched over 16,000 kilometers, according to some historians. Built over centuries, these walls served as defensive fortifications, cultural boundaries, and tax control points. They're considered one of the largest man-made earthworks in the world. As Benin expanded, it established control over trade towns in the Niger Delta region. This brought it into contact with Portuguese traders, and later, other Europeans. Control of the coast allowed Benin to export goods, influence trade, and assert itself as a regional superpower. Benin's power didn't rise by chance. It was built with vision, blood, and brilliance. A kingdom of warriors and kings, unmatched in pride, feared in war, and respected in peace. In Benin, art was not for decoration, it was history cast in bronze, culture woven in beads, and belief carved in wood. Every piece had a voice, a spirit, and a story that lives on even today. The Benin Bronzes are iconic brass and bronze plaques, heads, and sculptures that once decorated the walls of the royal palace. These works captured historical events, royal ceremonies, warriors, and even contact with Europeans. Cast using the lost wax technique, a method so advanced that European experts were stunned when they first saw them in the 19th century. The bronzes weren't just art, they were visual archives, documenting centuries of Benin life. To wear coral was to wear power. In Benin, every bead spoke of legacy, nobility, and sacred responsibility. The Oba and chiefs wore coral bead crowns, necklaces, and chest pieces, believed to be gifts from the sea god Alakan. Coral symbolized wealth, purity, and divine authority. These regalia were ritually prepared, and only those of noble status could wear them. Artistry in Benin was strictly controlled by guilds, highly trained families who passed skills down through generations. Key guilds included Iganaramwan, bronze casters; Igbasamwan, ivory carvers; Isekpokan, wood carvers; Iwibo, custodians of royal dress and protocol. These guilds worked directly under the Oba's patronage and were considered sacred professions. Spirituality was the air Benin breathed, a life guided by ancestors, oracles, and the divine Oba himself. The people of Benin believed in a supreme god called Osanobwa, who created the universe. Beneath him were many lesser deities and ancestral spirits, who could bless or curse the living. Shrines were built in homes, markets, and the palace, where people offered kola nuts, animal sacrifices, and prayers. Diviners, Ohen, consulted the Ifa oracle to solve personal and political problems. The Benin people honored their ancestors through ceremonies, festivals, and altars. Bronze heads and ancestor staffs were placed on shrines to represent royal lineage. The annual Igu festival was one of the most important rituals, a celebration of the Oba's spiritual renewal and the kingdom's protection. In Benin art, nothing was random. A leopard meant power. A snake was transformation. A bird was the messenger between worlds. Symbols were everywhere, in art, on palace walls, on the Oba's robe. Even the placement of beads or the way a sculpture faced had deep meaning. This symbolic language tied the kingdom's culture, politics, and religion together. Music and dance were integral to royal processions, religious festivals, and community events. Instruments like akasa drums, bells, flutes, and rattles accompanied rituals. Oral traditions, storytelling, proverbs, praise poetry, helped preserve history before written records. The Kingdom of Benin, once proud, feared, and unmatched, met its darkest hour at the hands of empire. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive in the late 15th century, around 1485. They established diplomatic relations with Oba Esigi and began trading firearms, brass, coral, and goods in exchange for pepper, ivory, and palm oil. Benin even sent ambassadors to Portugal, and vice versa. There was mutual respect in the early days. As time passed, trade expanded to Dutch, British, and French merchants, each wanting a piece of Benin's wealth. By the 1800s, Britain grew more aggressive, wanting to control palm oil trade and open up Benin to full economic exploitation. Benin's rulers resisted, limiting trade to maintain sovereignty and cultural balance. What was once a handshake turned into a chokehold. In 1897, British official James Philip set out to visit Benin despite warnings from Oba of Benin not to come during a sacred festival. Some Benin chiefs saw the visit as a violation and threat, leading to an ambush where several British officers were killed. That ambush became the excuse Britain needed. A punishment was coming, swift, brutal, and historic. In retaliation, Britain launched a full-scale military invasion of Benin in February 1897. Thousands of soldiers attacked the city, burning homes, killing civilians, and looting the sacred royal palace. Oba of Benin was captured and later exiled to Calabar. What the British couldn't destroy, they stole. Over 4,000 Benin bronzes, ivory tusks, ceremonial swords, coral crowns, and sacred objects were looted. These were shipped to museums in London, Germany, France, and the United States, where many still remain today. The treasures were sold to fund the expedition, and Benin's spiritual and cultural soul was scattered across the world. The Oba's power was stripped, the city lay in ruins, and British colonial rule began. Yet, even in exile, Oba of Benin remained dignified, refusing to sign away Benin's identity. The monarchy survived, with descendants of the Oba still holding ceremonial power in modern-day Edo state. But history has a way of demanding justice. In recent years, Nigeria and Edo people have called for the return of the stolen Benin bronzes. Some institutions, like Germany and a few UK museums, have begun returning artifacts. The Edo Museum of West African Art, EMOA, is being built in Benin City to house returning treasures and tell the true story of the kingdom. Despite this tragedy, Benin's legacy continues to inspire. In the years following the invasion, efforts have been made to repatriate the looted bronzes and other artifacts, while Benin's cultural influence is felt around the world, particularly in the African diaspora. Afro-Brazilian festivals, the religion of candomblé, and various art forms all trace their roots back to Benin. The cultural exchange between Africa and the Americas has ensured that the legacy of the Benin Kingdom lives on, despite the kingdom's political fall. Benin's story is one of resilience, cultural richness, and profound influence. The kingdom's contribution to art, religion, trade, and governance has left an indelible mark on African and world history. From its origins steeped in myth to its rise as a powerful empire, Benin's legacy endures as a testament to the ingenuity and strength of its people. Today, as efforts continue to bring back the kingdom's stolen treasures, the spirit of Benin lives on, inspiring future generations to honor and preserve the history of one of Africa's greatest civilizations. Benin did not fall. It endured. Though looted and broken, the spirit of its people, the pride of its culture, and the beauty of its art have survived. And now, the world is listening. The roots of Africa still run deep, and they will never be erased.